Hi everyone. Today's video is going to be a little different. I'm going to be talking about my own battle with depression and anxiety, and I'm also going to touch on my eating disorder. So if any of that bothers you, maybe click away. October 10th is World Mental Health Day. Over 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression, and it's simply not talked about enough. The goal of World Mental Health Day is to help spread awareness about the ways that we can prevent and treat depression effectively, as well as removing the stigma around depression, mental health, and all the treatments surrounding that. Ultimately, the goal of this campaign is to have more people seeking the help that they need. So I thought I'd go ahead and take this opportunity to talk about my own struggles. So hopefully those of you who are watching who are also struggling will find comfort and hopefully feel empowered to seek help too. So for almost my whole life, I've been dealing with some form of social anxiety. I've always been a shy person my whole life, but early, like preteen years, it started developing into more of a social anxiety, where social interaction scared me. I couldn't talk to strangers. I couldn't even ask a waiter for ketchup. I couldn't order for myself. Just standard kind of shy behaviors, I guess. But they started to become more and more extreme, where really simple tasks like going to the counter at a fast food restaurant and asking for ketchup became a meltdown. Like, I remember that would literally happen to me, like, almost every time we went out to eat. I would end up crying because I couldn't make myself talk to a stranger. And it became really debilitating as I got older, because it prevented me from doing a lot of the things I really wanted to do. So, of course, obviously I had problems making friends because I was shy and nervous to talk to people, but I also couldn't get a job because I was too afraid, or I didn't even get my license until after I graduated high school because I was afraid. And I mean, this among other things, like I couldn't go to social events, I couldn't go anywhere by myself, and I was just afraid to leave the house, really, so I just stayed home. I isolated myself. And it was strange because in my mind, I could always imagine myself, I could see myself in these situations being confident and cool, and I didn't have the anxiety in my mind. I could just see myself asking for the ketchup, and it was okay, and everything was fine, and I was like, I can do this. But as soon as I actually got in the real world and needed to talk to people, I would just freeze up and my heart would start beating, and I would overthink it, and I would build it up to something that it wasn't, and things just got so overwhelming that I couldn't do anything. And I was mad at myself for that, because I could see myself doing it in my mind, but I couldn't follow through, and it made me really angry with myself. And on top of that, it was stunting my maturation, because all of my peers are hanging out together, learning to drive, driving their cars around, going out to places. Even just like going off campus for lunch scared me. Like I couldn't do any of those things. So I was even further isolating myself, and I felt alone. I felt lonely. I felt unincluded, and it was ultimately my own doing. It wasn't like they were isolating me, I was doing it to myself. So all the isolation eventually led to a depression. I felt so alone, and I was always talking down to myself, that I really lost all self-confidence, and I continued to just stay home by myself and think down on myself. I had these nagging voices that were like, you're not good enough. Why can't you just do things like a normal person? You suck. Just that kind of voice was just in the back of my head all the time, constantly just be belittling me, making me feel less than I am. I didn't have the motivation to do anything. Not only did I not want to get out of bed, I didn't want to go to school, I didn't want to face the world, but I also didn't even have hobbies. I didn't even want to like play video games. Like I didn't want to do anything. Like I just wanted to lay there and die. Like I just wanted to just turn to dust. Like I didn't want anything because it all overwhelmed me so much. And all the isolation and talking down on myself was just feeding into this eating disorder that I had growing, essentially. I've always had body image issues. I've always compared myself physically to other people, and the depression and just mean thoughts just fed that so much, and it just grew. So I'm not going to talk about my eating disorder all the way because it's not super related to this video, but it was important because the depression triggered the eating disorder, and the eating disorder fed the depression. So it was just a vicious cycle of talking down to myself, essentially, is what it comes down to. And I was just setting all these rules for myself and essentially setting myself up for failure, and constantly telling myself I wasn't good enough, that I was fat, that I was ugly, that no one will like me, and that I'm just not good enough. And these are all ultimately lies that I was telling myself, and it was horrible. And the more I fed into my eating disorder, the more depressed I felt, the more isolated I felt. I used to go for runs every single day, and I hate running, but I used to go on runs every day to try to burn calories. I felt miserable, and as I would be running, I would just zone out staring at the stripes on the road, and I would see cars driving by, and I would imagine just jumping out in front of them, or just keeping running until, I don't know, until I starved. I don't know, like just running away. I would imagine all kinds of horrible, horrible fantasies about killing myself. And for about a year during high school, I was having suicidal thoughts on an almost daily basis. And it started to become normal. I stopped realizing that that was not okay and that it was not normal. And I thought to myself again, well, I'm not actually hurting myself, so therefore I don't really have a problem, or, I'm not really depressed, or I don't really have an eating disorder because I'm not thin enough. I still eat sometimes, and like all of these things made me think, well, I don't need to seek help. I don't need help. I'm not sick. And that was not true. I needed help so badly, and I didn't know it. And I was afraid because I didn't want to be a burden, which in retrospect is so ridiculous and not an excuse. So, everything in my life was just going downhill until someone reached out to me. A friend noticed that I was not myself. They noticed that something was wrong, because I was having a hard time hiding it at that point because it was so bad. And they reached out to me and they said, "Do you need help?" And I opened up to them, and that was one of the best decisions I ever made, and that person ultimately saved my life. I talked to them about my problems, and they told me that it's not okay, and you do need help, and these are not normal things. And they helped me to end the cycle of negative thinking. I joined several therapy groups. I even started reading the 12 steps from AA because even though I was not an alcoholic, those are some really good words for healing. In college, I finally saw a psychiatrist, and I was officially diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I've been on a low-dose antidepressant ever since, and I'm absolutely not ashamed of that whatsoever. And that's another thing, is that growing up, I was always told that antidepressants are bad, stay away from them at all costs. And so another reason why I avoided seeking help, because I would have these thoughts like, I should see a therapist, I should see a psychiatrist, but then I thought, I'm not sick enough, those are bad, don't do that. And that stigma really did prevent me from seeking help, and I'm so glad I did. And yes, I take them every day, and no, it doesn't make me a zombie, and it has helped me so much, because there's only so much that I could do by myself. And essentially it really was a chemical imbalance for me, and antidepressants make it bearable, and they make it so that I can help myself even more. But ultimately the biggest step I ever took was just talking about it, getting help, joining a group, talking about it. I also want to say that recovery is not linear, and I'm sure you've heard that, but for me, when I started recovering, it felt like I was just going through the motions just because I knew I had to. I'd go to groups, I'd listen to people talk, go home, whatever, read the books, do whatever. And I didn't feel like it was helping, but I was doing it anyway because that's what I was supposed to do. But slowly, bit by bit, and you don't notice it when it's, slow. It's not going to be on off. But slowly those bad thoughts went away, and one day I just realized I haven't thought about killing myself today. And that was such a huge accomplishment. And I thought, going through therapy, going through these self-help groups and stuff, it was like I kept thinking, well, I'm always going to have those thoughts because I can't control them. Like, I can't turn them off. So, I'll feel better and I'll stop doing these bad things to myself, but I'll still have the thoughts. But that wasn't true. I was wrong. They went away. You don't turn them off, but you work on it. And you're patient, and they go away, and you feel so much better. And yeah, recovery is freaking hard. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to relapse. You're going to go through a struggle, but nothing is as bad as just sitting in your depression, sitting in your problems. I promise. Ultimately, mental health is health. So just like we take care of ourselves to prevent us from getting sick and to treat sicknesses, we can do the same thing with our mental health. If you only take away one thing from this whole video, it's don't wait, seek help. My biggest regret is not getting help sooner, because the sooner you start recovering, the sooner you're going to feel better. So if you think you know someone who's struggling, reach out to them. And if you're struggling, reach out to someone. This video has been sponsored by BetterHelp. They're an online counseling website. When you join BetterHelp, you're going to fill out some questions, and it's basically going to be like Match.com for therapy. They're going to pair you up with a licensed therapist who meets your needs and who's going to help you and understand your specific problems the best. And you can even put in stuff like, I want my therapist to be male or female or religious or non-religious. You can put in all kinds of stuff, because finding a great therapist that works for you is very important, and BetterHelp makes it really easy to find a great therapist. And if you're not happy with your therapist that you've been paired up with, it's very easy to just switch. So you'll be able to schedule as many counseling sessions as your therapist's schedule allows, and in between sessions you can text them and email them as much as you want and have that kind of correspondence. Plans start as low as $35 a week, so if you're struggling, there's really no excuse. I highly encourage you to check out BetterHelp. There's a link in the description. Another great thing you can do is recommend BetterHelp to a friend that you know is struggling. It's also a great way to help them. So I hope me sharing my story has empowered some of you to seek help, and I hope this video wasn't too weird, but I try my best to be an open book, because there really shouldn't be any shame around mental health, because it's out of our control. It's not our fault, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye now.